Hello and welcome to SolarWinds Lab. I'm your host today, Kevin Sparenberg, and we're going to be continuing our study of using the SolarWinds query language, or SWCL, to present data and give you everything you need to really kind of take your monitoring game up to that next level. So we're going to dive right in. There's going to be lots of examples. I will post them all to Thwack. After this lab gets published there, I'll have resources available for you to use and borrow from and maybe use for your own inspiration. But I need to start with a quick recap, so let's dive in. Okay, so like we said before, the SolarWinds query language, or SWCL, depending on how you want to pronounce it, is used to talk directly to the SolarWinds database, but through a proxy layer. The reason this is done is it insulates any database changes we make going forward in the product. So if you have a SQL query that works today, after an upgrade, that one may no longer work. But if you write it in SWCL, SolarWinds query language, it will. If this is the first time you've heard this, then I really encourage you to go back and watch the two previous parts of the session, kind of like a 101 and a 201, and that is in Lab 86 and Lab 91. I'm going to rely heavily today on the SWCL Studio, and SWCL Studio is available on the Orion SDK page, which is hosted on GitHub. You can just search on GitHub for Orion SDK and find the installer. Once you have that installer, then you just run it. It currently only runs on Windows, but that's okay. You can always run it directly on your Orion server if necessary. And then you just log in. The last kind of bit I want to talk about is that SWCL is very similar to SQL. If you know basic SQL, you can handle SWCL. Now, we're going to go into some slightly advanced things today where it pertains to modern dashboards, but just understand that this is where everything starts from. So the wildcards are specific for the SQL OS. Select queries are the only ones supported. Single quotes are for strings, and comments are double dashed. I will use all of these in different ways. And I want to take another step back where I want to talk about dashboard research. Now, we had a very good session this year at Thwack Camp, specifically about building dashboards for your audience. And that's a great primer. It's something you should go totally watch, not right now, keep watching me, something you should totally watch, but it gives you a real good discussion about, hey, this is what we want to do, this is who we're building it for, and especially in an era where people aren't necessarily in front of a large bunch of knock screens, consolidating dashboard information to a very specific arena is incredibly important. For instance, if you have something where you're just worried about the alerts in the service desk, you need to build something for that. If you have something specifically for your applications team, maybe for your SQL servers, you need to have a dashboard specifically for them. Having that in front of them is something that's really important moving forward so they can do their job most effectively. Now we need to take a quick dive into modern dashboards. So modern dashboards really are encompassed by 4 specific types of widgets, and that is the KPI widget. It's useful for showing kind of pure numbers or percentages, or not just pure integers, but representing a real number. Then we have proportional widgets, which are your traditional donut, pie, and bar charts. And those are great for kind of quick glance and understanding what's happening in your environment. Specifically, if you build it for in specific regions. So if you build it just for interfaces or you build it just for volumes, then it will make sense for the audience when they see it. Table widget, we did this in the 201 class where we built custom tables using SWCL queries. We're going to take that and kind of move it up a little bit into the new widget format using modern dashboards. And the last, and certainly not the least, is the time series widget. And this is something you've already done if you've ever built a performance analysis or what we call perf stack in your environment. You just build it, save it, and then you can bring it in. I'll show you how all of these work, pretty much step by step. But now it's time for some mock-ups. So today we're going to build one that's all about alerts. So let's talk about alerts. What's important when you think about an alert? Well, depending on your infrastructure, it might be slightly different. But ones I've seen and heard from customers that use a lot is something with a couple breakdowns. So let's say we want something here, and this is our acknowledged alerts, and we want just a number here, and this is our unacknowledged alerts. And then maybe Some teams kind of need to know a breakdown by severity, so we'll go ahead and put some type of pie or donut chart here, and this is by Sev. And then maybe we're interested in having a list here of the noisiest nodes. So these are the ones that are kind of the most chatty, the ones sending the most alerts. And then maybe we need something here that is a time series showing a nice little chart. And maybe this one is all for, I don't know, let's say the incidents that were created. Okay, so we've got a simple mock-up, and we can start by thinking about the ways we're going to present these. So these top ones here, these are KPI widgets. These are our proportional. This obviously is a table. And then this is our time series. Boop. Okay, that works. And then, of course, we can kind of play with the colors moving forward. So this is kind of what I drew already. And yes, I already had this planned out in advance. This is something that you can do with your teams. It's something I highly encourage you to do. Whiteboarding is an excellent exercise for this, especially to get kind of filtered down the information, because you really want to make sure you only bubble up the most important information. Alert fatigue is very much a thing, as is bad dashboard design. If you have too much stuff on a dashboard, you're just not going to be interested in it. I need to make a global statement here. I am not, nor have I ever pretended to be a DBA. I am at best an accidental DBA. And that means some of the queries I'm going to be writing today may be able to be made more efficient, maybe not in the ideal format. This is where we get into the is it good enough discussion. And for me, for dashboards, at least for the first pass for you building them, good enough is great. It's at least getting you started. We're going to talk a little bit about aggregate functions here. So aggregate functions in SWCL behave the similarly way that they do in SQL. And these are ones that sum up or average or pull mins or maxes out of a certain range of data. Now, that's great, and it's something that I used as a crutch for many, many years, where I would take raw data, stick it into something like Excel, which I know it's not a database, but it's what I was comfortable with at the time. And then I would do my sums and my groupings and all that kind of stuff in there. And it worked fine. If you want full details on any of these, we're going to use a couple of them. We're not going to use all of them, at least not to the detail level that you may need in your environment. The full documentation is available on the wiki on GitHub for the Orion SDK. I'm going to start with something simple. This is memory and CPU stats for the last 7 days. There is a humongous caveat here. Do not run this in your production environment. I will say it again. Do not run this query in your production environment. I took the hit for you just to kind of give you an example. My lab returned 141, my lab runs with 141 nodes, and that query returned over 100,000 records. You don't want to do this. It's unnecessary, because what we're really trying to do is find a way to summarize this information. So the summary can be in any number of ways. For me, it's, you know what, let's kind of pull out some numbers. Let's figure out what the minimum average load is over these 7 days, what the maximum minimum load is over those days, how much, what's the average percentage used for all of these, and group that all by the vendor. Now you can see from the example here, I'm using the min, the max, and the average aggregate functions. And then I'm doing where the CPU date time is greater than or equal to get UTC date, which is right now, and back 7. Back 7 means 7 days. And then I'm going to group that by the vendor, and I'm going to sort that by percentage memory. So let's go ahead and try this one out. You're going to see me jumping back and forth a lot, because it's just easier. So if you haven't run SWCL Studio before, just go in your Start menu, look for SWCL Studio. And then Authenticate. And once everything populates here on the left, as it expands out the metadata, you're ready to roll. There we go. So we can see my connection. We can see all of the groupings, We can see all of the tables underneath those, and here's that CPU load one we're working with. But I'm going to go ahead and just paste it in here, and then I'm going to see if I can zoom in a little bit. All right, so what did we have before? It took 12 seconds to run. I returned 100,000 rows, and this time it runs, I get 8 rows back, and it runs in 0.09 seconds. This is much, much better. So I get the minimum average CPU load, the maximum of the min CPU load, and the average percent memory broken down by vendor. Okay, not bad. So that's kind of just a quick touch into the aggregate functions and why you want to use them, how they're important. It's much easier than going through hundreds of thousands of records and trying to sum stuff up, sum some of the information up or average that information up. It's just a whole lot easier to bring it all in. The aggregate function we're going to rely on a lot today is going to be count, because if we're building an alert, if we're building an alert dashboard, then we really want to know how many alerts, and that is really all based around the count function. There's another note I need to say about filtering. So if you're familiar with SQL, and you're more familiar than I am, you probably already know about the having clause, and this is what's used to filter on aggregates. You cannot use the where clause in this case. There's probably some weird way you could do it with like embedded queries or something like that, but this is the proper syntax. You can see here on the left, I've got where the average CPU memory is over 50, that's highlighted. That will not work in a where clause. It has to be put into a having clause, and that is typically after, in fact, I think it's mandatory after the group by. Did I mention I wasn't a DBA? So that will essentially roll up all the information and then filter it at that point. And then your order by clause is all the way at the end. Again, all of these samples will be put online. So if we talk about this KPI widget, I've got some examples here. What you really want here is you need to boil down your process to a single number that represents something valid in your infrastructure. So in our case, I really just want to do a split down of the number of acknowledged nodes versus, or excuse me, the number of acknowledged alerts and the number of unacknowledged alerts. And it's pretty simple. So I'm counting just pretty much anything in the return field, but in this case, it's counting the alert object, and I'm returning the name, or I'm returning it back as the name quantity. I'm pulling it from the active alerts table where acknowledged is 0. And this little is null thing is in there because there's technically 3 states that this field can have. This field can be 0, 1, meaning false or true, or null. Null is defaulted to false, or excuse me, yes, is defaulted to false. So we want to kind of get all this information there. And the bottom one is really just that flipped. So if I take these and we want to see if they work, we'll go ahead and put this in here. You know what? I'm going to get a new tab so I can keep these straight. And I'll zoom in again. And this should really only return, we're only asking for 1 return. So this should just bring back something with quantity. Quantity, 531. And I think actually I got that backwards because that's a 0. These are actually unacknowledged alerts. So whoops, that's fine. And that is one of the reasons I like to use comments. So let's go ahead and bring in the other one. And we'll bring up a new tab. In SWCL Studio, it's Control-T. Replace that. And now we know that I got those backwards. This is acknowledged alerts. And we'll see if we can't give you a little more zoom on that. Yeah, that makes more sense. In my lab, I've only acknowledged a handful of alerts, and that's fine. So now that we have something we want to represent those first 2 KPI widgets with, where do we go? If you're running one of the newer versions of the Orion platform, you should have the ability to go directly to Settings, Manage Dashboards. And for me, I've already created one, but it's empty that I'm calling SolarWinds Lab 93. So I'm just going to go ahead and open that, or you can add modern dashboard, give it a name, and then go directly to the edit. And it's brilliant in its blankness. So let's go ahead and put a couple things there. So I'm going to drag a widget over here, and yeah, we'll just start with the 1. So I want to finish configuring that one. And the widget type I want is KPI. I want it from empty widgets. Give me a KPI from empty. All right, well, that's incredibly boring, right? That's because we haven't actually put anything in it yet. So once we edit the widget, we'll give it a title and description. So this is alert acknowledgement, and this is act and unact alert. Now this doesn't have URL, so that's fine. And widget description. Now I'm going to say you probably should put a widget description in here, and that will come up later for the reason why. It is optional, and when you're originally architecting this, it's fine to just kind of play, but I would personally, I would totally put one in here. So query Orion alerts for act and unact counts. Okay. All right, so all we did was really give it a title and a little bit of description. So now we got to put our first value in. So let's bring a value in. So we need to give it a label, acknowledged alerts, and then we need to choose the data model. Now you see there's two options here. You can use a graphical query builder, which is perfectly fine. But since in the previous two labs we've gone ahead and actually built up your skills from the previous sessions, I want to use this in pure SWCL. So hand it a SWCL query, and we'll go back and find my acknowledged alerts. And then we will edit this, paste it in. You can even keep the comments in here, which is really, really nice. And then we'll validate, and it is valid. And we'll show the records. 3. Perfect. So acknowledged alerts 3. And that's pretty much it, unless we want to continue to play with this. So that's a single KPI metric in there. Now, if we want to put thresholds on this for acknowledged alerts, we can. But for me, I also do want to select a background color just because I want it to pop a little bit. And then you can select units, and they just go below the number, but that's unnecessary for alerts because it's a count. But if this is something like gigabits percentage, or gigabits per second, or something like actual like megabits of free space, you'd want to put something in here to kind of set that off. Now, this is one, but we need another one for the unacknowledged. So I will go back, I'll find my unacknowledged, and I'll add a new value. So this is again, we don't need units, and we'll put our SWCL query in here. Show records, 531, cool. And then this is where I think is the fun part, especially for something like the KPI widget. You can put in thresholds. So I can use custom thresholds here, and my warning threshold is when there's over, I don't know, 250, and then my critical is when it's over 600. And you can see it automatically changes the colors using the default color scheme. So that is no coloring except for the one that you select in the background color area, or the yellow or the red. In real environments, this is probably going to be significantly smaller, but for me, I like the contrast of seeing the red. That's it. Changes saved, and oh no, they don't fit. Well, that's kind of one of the great things about the modern dashboards. I can just grab this and drag it however large I want it. Now it does snap to certain locations, but if this is, a single digit or a multi-digit number, this is fine just as it is. Okay, so we did that. Let's talk about the next one. So let's talk about building stuff into a table. So here's a quick breakdown. This is nodes with the most active alerts. In other words, these are nodes that are related to an alert, and getting a count on those, and also bringing back some information. So here we'll bring back the quantity, that is a number of alerts that are active right now. That is the related node caption, which is the caption name you're all familiar with, and a details URL so it can be clickable, and then also the status. And I do have to do a manual join here for related node ID to the nodes table, but this is not complex. Again, I will provide these examples. So let's see what we get from that if we just do it in SWCL Studio. So we'll grab all this, jump to SWCL Studio, bring myself up another new tab. I'll zoom a little bit, and let's see what we get here. Okay, so it looks like we've got 25 alerts on NockSQL, and this is the DTAR URL, and the status is 14. All right, so we're bringing back the status as a raw number, not as a named thing, or it's not up, down, critical, whatever. It's just a number. And that's okay because SolarWinds Orion knows how to process that. So if we do this, and let's make that table widget now. So we'll go back here and we'll drag and drop and create a new widget, and that was underneath this one. We'll finish configuring this. Again, all empty widgets, table widget, table, create. And you can also go to customize on that and immediately go into this customization, but I get in the habit of doing things the same way. So this is the chattiest nodes based on alert count. Obviously, more descriptions are better, especially if you just want people to glance at it and understand what they're looking at. So we'll go ahead and put in our SWCL query, validate, it's good, show the records, okay. And that is what we want. Cool. Now in this one, you notice I did a top 10 count, and that was intentional because I want this to basically be a fixed size. Now because I did that, I probably should make a note of it somewhere. In fact, I like to do it in the subtitle because that way you know exactly what you're getting when you look at this. That way you don't think that you have only 10 that are chatty. And in this case, this may not be the ideal scenario, but interfaces that are over their utilization, or applications that have slow response times, things like that. All right, but we built our model, but we still don't have anything in our table. And that's because we have to select, after we have the model and the information returned, we have to select what we want to put in that table. You don't have to put everything that you returned. I tend to, but you don't have to. So we'll start with the node name, and then, excuse me, we'll select the value of node. All right, cool, there we go. And then we want to add a new column. And this one, I end up doing these quote backwards, quantity, and alert count. And then I'll add another new column. And like I said, I like to do these backwards, and then the status. Cool, but not great. The way we can make this great is actually to apply some formatting. So, and there's many ways you can do formatting. But for me, I'm going to keep it simple. So for the node, I want a link. The label will be node, and the URL is the details URL. All of a sudden, they look like links. Okay. What about the status? I mean, the alert count's fine, and maybe I want alert count first, so I can just take this and move it up. There you go. That's now first. But status, maybe we want to change this. Maybe we want to change this to a status label instead. And we select status. Like I said, Orion already knows all of these statuses. And again, that doesn't look great. So we can go ahead and bring this over, and we'll probably make it the same size. It doesn't have to be. It can be any size you like. But for me, I want it to show all 10 records, so I'm going to drag it down to about there. And in a real environment, I probably would have changed this to like top 12, just so it fills in, because I'm that guy. Okay, so using SWCL, we've built KPI widgets, and we have built a table widget. All right, moving on. I already mentioned this, but it is absolutely important. You should be doing this. Always use a top X or a top X%, and I would actually lean towards the top X when you use table widgets. Again, this is just to make sure that you have clear representation. A table is great, but a table that has 10,000 rows does not belong on a dashboard. It belongs in a different type of thing, like a report. I like to put the information both on the filtering and or the sizing of this unit, of this particular widget. I like to put those in the subtitle, like I already did where I said top 10. And sorting is really critical here. Now that doesn't mean you can't go back and manually sort these when they're done, but I like to have the sort there from jump. And in fact, I probably should have put it in here. It's kind of implied, but let's be completely transparent here. There we go. Top 10 nodes sorted by alert count. Okay, I feel better about that. So now no one who looks at this resource will have any questions about what this contains. That is the best part about doing good dashboard design and research. You really want to make sure you get this information out to the people so they can understand it quickly and easily. This is how they can make decisions based on the data you've recorded. Okay, we're going to introduce something that is called conditional processing. And this is essentially if then else kind of processing in SWCL. It is inherited by SQL. And this is a very simple example I have here that I'm not even going to run, but it's really just here for illustrative purposes. So this selects the caption and CPU load, and there's a case statement. And the case basically says, I need you to compare something. And when the CPU load is high, then it returns one thing, in this case a string. When it is not quite as high, it looks all right, and anything else, it just kind of throws in there and says needs more work. And then you end that and give it a name so you can reference that later on. So this one will come through, and it's really simple. Now, the most important thing about this particular type of processing is it terminates when it finds the first match. So if I reordered these where the CPU load greater than 70 was first, and my CPU was 93, it would hit that first in processing, and that's what it would return because it met its requirements and it bailed out. Now, I call this a simple widget in the title here, and it technically is, except I'm doing a little kind of well, let's be serious here. I'm making it pretty. And this is maybe not the first one you would build, but maybe the second one you would build. And this is inspired by a post that was on Thwack when modern dashboards were originally released. And what this does is it pulls in the quantity, it groups it by the severity. So up here we are counting quantity. Down here we're grouping by severity. And then I'm actually sending some very specific information in. So if the severity is 0, and this is alert severity, not a status. This is a different field in the database. If the severity is 0, then use this color. These are HTML colors. If you're not familiar with this, there are many, many, many resources you can go and look them up. If it's 1, then it's this. If it's 2, then it's this, so on and so forth. And that all gets returned as the word color. Then we have a case. If it's 0, then I want the language. So 0, you can see here, 0 is informational, and we'll use this color. 1 is warning, and we'll use this color, so on and so forth. And that is returned just as the severity name. Okay. If we look at that one, and I'll scroll and I'll zoom in a little bit, but this is kind of a lengthy query. Okay, so we have 363 nodes with severity 2 that are critical. Or excuse me, we have 363 nodes because it's alert objects with sev2 critical. Okay, well, I mean, that's cute, right? But what are you going to do? Well, let's go back and see what we can do with a proportional widget. If I go to create a new proportional widget, and I want to start with empties, and I don't have to select proportional, it's right there. Create the widget. Cool. We're going to start with names, and this was alert objects by severity. And that might be enough. Okay. We have a couple options here. We have pie charts, donuts, vertical, horizontal. I'm going to put the donuts because honestly, I'm just tired of pie charts. And you can use a legend on the right or none if it's super obvious. I'm going to leave it on the right for the time being. And then let's go ahead and put in our query. First we'll validate. Query is valid. Show the records. That works. Now you notice on this one I didn't put a sort by. Because it's a proportional widget, it technically doesn't need it. I could have added an additional field in there since the severity numbers don't match directly to what I would gauge as like my severity levels. Like you can see that notice is a Sev level 4. I could have added an additional field in there in the having clause. You know what? Forget it. Let's just give you the rough it. So if I do that, I could do case when, and you know what? This is great. I'll just steal all of this. When it's informational, then I actually want to return, I don't know. It's informational, so I don't really care that much. 50, just random numbers. And I'm going to steal all of this again. And then when it is warning, 10, critical, 5, serious, 1, and notice 100. And then I'm going to end as sort order. And I need to actually get rid of that comma because that'll throw an error. And then I can go down here, order by sort order. And I'm going to put curly brace or hard brackets around it just because. Now let's see, since I did this live. Cool. So I've got 5 criticals, 10 warnings. So I can use this. You know what? I built it. Might as well use it, right? So let's go ahead and replace, show records. And you can see that we have notice, then warning, the informational. Oh, that's right. The sort order doesn't actually work here in the preview. And that's intentional. It's built that way by design. It's because of the way the data gets returned, but we know that we have the sort order stored in there. So, category field is quantity? No, it is not. The category field is the severity. There we go, critical, warning, informational, notice. And this is where the sorting appears in these kinds of charts. It just determines the order in which the information is displayed. The data format is custom. It's not an Orion status. Icon mapping, I didn't bring in icons for these. I guess I could have by looking up the icons in the database and including those, but I can bring in the colors. So I can select color. Ooh, pretty. And that's it, save the changes. So alerts by severity, cool. Nice. So now we know we have 363 critical statuses, 39 in a warning status, 131 informational, and 1 notice. Now, these are alerts, in other words, things that have been triggered in the system, not necessarily emails that are going out. So just make sure you wrap your head around that. Then maybe I want to play with my format a little. Like, I liked this to start, but maybe I need to change something. Maybe, you know what? This will be easier to interpret if it's vertical. So, cool. Let's do that vertical. That sizes up nice. All right, cool. What about the last one? So, a couple of notes on the proportional widget. Just make sure you spend time with them. Always ask questions. That's what the Orion SDK forum is on Thwack for. And then I want to talk about imitation being the sincerest form of flattery. You've probably all heard this. And for me, the only thing better than imitation is basically downright theft, is duplicating someone else's work that has been fantastic, is using that, I'll use the word steal that from another dashboard and put it into your own. And we've made sure we included that here in the modern dashboards. So if you noticed before, when I drag and drop a new widget, I say, cool, finish configuring. You notice this source up here where it says any dashboard? Well, maybe someone built one that was really good already. And this is one that was, these are a couple that were contributed by Crystal Taylor during one of her sessions. And maybe I want node status here. And I can click, get a little preview. Ooh, me likey. So I want that. So I'll create it. And that's it, it's done. I totally do that. Now that it's on my page, if I really want to customize it more, I can continue to edit. But since multiple people can go and make these changes, it's great that you can just have someone build a dashboard that you really like and say, you know what, that is fantastic, and I like it so much, I'm going to use it. Well, this one doesn't work so great vertically, but you get the idea. You can basically use these in any way, shape, or form. So let's see, there we go. Let's go 3 by 2, and I think we can probably shorten this a little bit and still get all the information. Nice. Again, these are just some of the things I absolutely love about modern dashboards. One other thing that we haven't really touched on in this discussion is that modern dashboards auto refresh. In other words, the HTML content inside the page, it's all HTML5 driven, is that it automatically updates when it detects changes. It doesn't require a page refresh. And then, well, we're certainly missing one. So we got KPIs, we got proportionals, we got two KPIs technically. We have a proportional, we have a table. What are we missing? Time series data. Okay, so let's go ahead and bring in time series data. So we'll put it here, and then we'll finish configuring it. This is a time series widget. I want to start with a blank one. Create widget. Cool. Okay. Now we customize it. So we edit it. So what data do we want? If you notice here, it says perf stack. And here's where you import your previously defined perf stack models. So I'm going to go ahead and select the model, and I'm going to use this one, incidents that I built. And we're going to call this try not to get my caps lock on next time, which I just did anyway again. And maybe we say last 12 hours. You know what? Last 7 days. I think it'll be more interesting. And time series really should be long so you can actually see what happens. Now, for the sake of this particular dashboard, I'm going to go ahead and remove the node status. You can see the stuff reshifts around, and then build this. Now, this is great if you've got multiple stacks of these, and since I have only the one, I can leave it like this. And that's pretty much it. So now it's done. And you can add this to your existing navigation. So here we have our URL section. And if I want to put this in my summaries, I can go to all settings, scroll all the way down to customize menu bars. And then since I'm logged in as the admin, you can see these here. I want to edit this. And none of them appear here. And that's OK. It's not going to show in this list because it's not designed to be in this list. But you can add one in the URL. You can use the full URL, but you should use a relative one. And I don't need it to open in a new window. So now on this list, if it's sorted alphabetically, I have Lab 93, and I can just drag and drop that here, and I'll just put it at the end. Submit. So now, my dashboards, home, Lab 93. And there you go. That's your dashboard. Now, since this is live, we want to make sure we give everyone an opportunity to ask questions. And that's pretty much the end of what I have. There are a couple recommendations. My biggest recommendation is to try to get everything, quote, above the fold. So in other words, people won't have to scroll on a dashboard. That will work out best. If you want, you can totally play with the dashboarding part of the modern dashboards where you use the query builder. But since the last two labs, we've really gone into detail about kind of up-leveling your SWCL skills. I wanted to show specifically about those. So let's see if we have any questions from the chat. Did I just see KPI stack vertically as well as on? Yes, the KPI widgets, I did that. Can widgets built for one modern dashboard be used on another? Yes, I think I showed that. Are we able to add these widgets to the classic dashboards? Not as yet, and there's a couple technology reasons behind that. It doesn't have to do with the underlying data, it has to do with the way it's presented to that particular layer. Other people are far more better qualified to answer that for me as to the why. But that's why you can actually take a lot of the things you already have in your other dashboards and just replicate them. In fact, a lot of them are incredibly simple to do stuff in SWCL. If you just want nodes with alerts or nodes based on status, that can be done as a pie chart, it can be done as a table. Probably wouldn't do it as a table because it's going to be incredibly long, but KPIs, the one that I totally stole from Crystal's dashboard, perfect example. And with all of the people that now have the ability to build dashboards, which is honestly quite a lot, it's no longer just admins. The modern dashboards allow many, many people in your environment to build a dashboard. You will have a lot of this information. And that's one of the reasons I said that you really should take the time to build a good description, because that's what will let people know what you're looking at. So when you say, oh, I want this node breakdown, but I don't know if someone's already built it, well, don't remake the wheel. Obviously, if you find an example on Thwack you want to use, perfectly fine. If you have a talk with the people in your organization and they say this is what we want, great. But if someone's already built that in your org, why make it again? Just use it. It'll be fine. In fact, it'll probably be better than fine because you already know it's working in their environment. You should probably reach out to them, ask them if there's any caveats to it, like, do you know if it handles, I don't know, muted alerts or muted devices or whatever it happens to be. But still being able to use that and not do all the legwork on the backside is incredibly powerful, especially as more and more people build dashboards. Putting these up on a knock screen really gives you the answers you need, especially since it doesn't require the page to refresh. You have live time information all the time. The second that information changes in the database, boom, it's displayed on the page. Are the widgets linked across? If someone makes a change to one of the dashboards and saying what effect? No. So if you build a modern dashboard somewhere and you copy, and that's why I use the word duplicate, they're not interlinked. The kind of format, the initial format of it where you kind of do the definition of it, that's what gets copied over and then it gets repopulated on your dashboard. Then if the person from the original dashboard makes a change, yours is still isolated and unique. Those are yours on your dashboard. And then other people, in fact, if the original person says, ooh, I like yours better, they can delete theirs and copy yours back over. Maybe you just did the thing where we changed the sorting on severity. Something simple like that. They really want it. Let's see. I think that's all the questions. I mean, I know I went over an absolute ton of stuff, and I know that if you've spent time with me for Lab 86 and Lab 91, we have gone way, way deep. And I want to thank you for letting me be your teacher. It's not something I generally gravitate to easily, but I really have enjoyed kind of helping work and produce the content for this series, even with snafus where I mix up alert or acknowledged and unacknowledged. Things happen. That's why it's live. So there is the couple places I want you to go. So can we go back to the screen real fast? So if you have questions about anything having to do with the SDK, specifically if you need help with a query, the best place to go is actually onto Thwack on the Orion SDK forum. So that's just thwack.com/Orion SDK. It'll take you right to the discussions area and you can ask your questions there. If you are just getting into it, I would probably suggest that you subscribe or at least follow a couple people. The people that generate content and do responses generally go into that area frequently. I know I'm in there at least twice a week just to see if I can help kick the tires with anybody. We spoke about SolarWinds Lab 86, which was Intro to PowerShell and the API. We talked about SolarWinds Lab 91, where we customize your own Orion platform with the API and SWCL. That one is the one where we talk about classic dashboards and how to do some of the stuff there, specifically around the custom query widgets and some of the kind of fun stuff you can do with that. And then I cannot recommend enough the Thwack Camp 2020 Orion dashboard tuning. It was just amazing. It's great. It's a discussion we've had over and over. Crystal, myself, Leon, Patrick. I know everybody here has talked about getting the data in front of people the most efficient way possible. And that can be anything from alerts to reports to dashboards. And we want to make sure that your environment and your organization sees value in your monitoring. You know, they don't just get the occasional email alert because that's not everything you do. You do significantly more for them, and making sure that you can bring that to the forefront and let them know is incredibly, incredibly key to making sure monitoring is its best place in your organization. So with that, that's the end of my deck, but I do have a special announcement. So I have it right here. And so there's been a lot of questions, comments, concerns about, I don't know. People have really, really enjoyed THWAC Camp, and I hope you have. And one of the things we kind of did for that every year is we kind of have this little creative kickoff. We build all kinds of stuff. And right now, everyone who has joined us for this lab live is going to get 2,000 THWAC points. And you can take that 2,000 THWAC points and use it towards this thing on the screen right now. Yes, that's right. You could be the proud owner of the THWAC Camp 2020 shirt. This is a limited quantity going into the THWAC store. So those 2,000 points that you earn are fantastic and will actually completely get you really close to the end. If you've been on THWAC for a while, you probably have plenty of points already. And if not, don't forget to check out our monthly missions. It's a great way to kind of add a couple more points to your balance. And I think that is all. Consensus from the room? I think we've ticked all the boxes. All right, if you have any further questions or you want to know what's coming up in further labs or you want to suggest topics for lab, definitely always go to lab.solarwinds.com. Make sure you follow that page on THWAC. And then in the future, you can reach out to me. I'm available on THWAC as KM Sigma. And until next time, I'll see y'all.